Good afternoon. My name is Patricia Jamieson, and I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Queen Anne's County. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for participating in this pre-election primary forum for Republican candidates seeking the Maryland Senate District 36 vacancy. The forum is a collaborative effort by Kent, the Mid-Shore, including Caroline, Dorchester, and Talbot, and Queen Anne's counties. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose membership is open to anyone at least 16 years of age. Our leagues on the shore support the belief that democracy works best when voters make informed decisions, and forums such as this are one way to do that. Our leagues also publish a voter's guide that contains information about candidates running for both state and local vacancies, and I think that there were copies out on the table when you came in. Thanks to the Kent County League for taking the lead in planning this forum. Also, a special thanks to Queen Anne's County TV for filming and producing this event, and to all of you who are here participating in person or by Facebook. Thanks especially to you candidates for your willingness to serve our community and for being part of our forum today. At this time, I'm going to turn the forum over to Mr. Sam Shogay, the moderator, who will introduce the candidates. Sam is the founder of Rivers and Roads Consulting. He's a past director of the Kent Chamber of Commerce, and probably many other things that I don't know about Sam. So take it over.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to our candidates. Thank you for joining us for this League of Women Voters Forum. The candidates for the 36th District State Senate seat are Heather Lynette Seclair, Stephen S. Hershey Jr., and Rick Bowers. I would like to ask the audience to please turn off your phones. The League allows no demonstrations, including applause, during the forum. We will ask for applause at the end. Any person engaging in a demonstration of any kind during this event will be escorted from the auditorium. The forum will begin with a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate. Initial questions prepared by the League and printed in the program were given to the candidates at least 10 days ago. The order in which candidates will take the first question was determined by random draw earlier today. Thereafter, questions will be alternated among the participants. I will repeat the question for each candidate if requested to do so. Please keep in mind that this is not a debate, so no candidate may interrupt the answer of another candidate. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to open, to answer a question, and to close. The timing is set by an automated clock, visible only to the moderator and the candidates, and I will call time if the candidate does not see that time has expired. We will take questions directly from the audience. At the very beginning, you were given a note card when you checked in. Simply write your question on that note card and raise it up, and one of our runners around the room will be able to take that, and we'll take it here to this panel to be screened and then forwarded to me to ask our candidates. The forum will last 75 minutes, and we will conclude at 3 p.m. At the conclusion of the forum, please show your appreciation for the candidates' participation in this forum with your applause, and don't forget to vote. So, with the ground rules laid, let's proceed to candidate introductions. Heather, you drew the first position, so I am going to turn the floor over to you for a 2-minute introduction, and your time starts now.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. My name is Heather Sinclair, and what I want you to know about me is I've been a citizen advocate lobbyist for the past 10 years in the state of Maryland and across the country. Basically, what that means is I had no organization or special interests behind me, and I never donated a dime to a politician, and I've passed about 150 bills across the country. And it's just because I care a lot about people. I've been a small business owner and a paralegal, but my favorite job is mom to my 2 boys who are 18 and 13. And I'm here because the status quo is not good enough, and you need a fighter on your side, and I am that person. I want to put me in this seat to fight for you, because you need a fighter on your side. My platform is going to consist of trying to overturn a lot of the bills that have already stripped our rights away and cleaning up the corruption that exists in our healthcare system. And major part of my platform is healthcare, because healthcare costs are skyrocketing and we can't afford it. So I'm going to address a lot of healthcare. I've already passed a lot of healthcare bills. I've passed criminal background checks and for medical doctors and mental health professionals in the state of Maryland, and also in 47 states across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. We are going to restart the clock. And Mr. Rick Bowers, you drew second position. Your time starts now.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the League for putting this on. Thank you, sir, for taking your time to moderate this event. I'd also like to thank my wife, Cheryl, of 42 years. It's been quite a ride, and I couldn't ask for a better partner. My name is Rick Bowers. I'm a father, a husband, businessman, pastor, and a person who wants to be your voice in Annapolis. But I realize I cannot be your voice unless I have your ear. I've committed myself to listen. I'll be representing 4 counties, and my goal is to make sure that I'm in each county at least once a month so that I can understand the needs of each particular county, because they're not all the same. I'm your American First candidate. I'm endorsed by Dan Cox, who was endorsed by Donald Trump. I've also been endorsed by Doug Mastriano, the Republican candidate for governor of Pennsylvania. You might ask why that's important. Well, District 36 butts Delaware and Pennsylvania. We also have the Conowingo, we have Susquehanna, a lot of issues there. I've already begun dialogue with Doug Mastriano about that. He's aware of the concern, our plight in Maryland, and he is committed to having meaningful conversation with us about the problems that we can address. I'm also a 2A supporter, pro-life. I'm not your go-along to get along person. Like I said, I want to be your voice, not the voice of special interest. It's very important you know who you're voting for. I would suggest each of you go to www.ratings.conservative.org. That's the American Conservative Union. Look at your current senator's ratings and determine whether or not his scores meet your expectation out of 100. I can assure you my scores will reflect conservative viewpoint. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rick. And in our third position, we have Stephen S. Hershey. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you very much, Sam, and thank you all for attending today, and those that are watching on the many social media broadcasting networks. My name is Steve Hershey. I've been your state senator for the last 9 years. I have worked very hard to fight for our conservative values in Annapolis, yet I have been able to deliver meaningful results. I can assure you that there's nobody that works harder than I do or fight harder than I do for our conservative values in Annapolis. I have been recently endorsed by the Maryland Right to Life, by the NRA, by NFIB, National Independent Federation of Businesses, and Maryland Retailers Association. So I have been someone who has been successful in Annapolis, not only fighting for conservative values, but being able to deliver results. I'm asking for your vote again because at this time, the environment in Annapolis is toxic. The Democrat establishment has taken over Annapolis. They have enough votes to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and they need fighters. They don't need people that are experimenting with trying to be a legislator, that are coming across, that are saying, hey, I think I can do the job. I know I can do the job. It's been proven. I've been successful at it. I can assure you, when their debates are on the floor, there's nobody that wants Steve Hershey getting up on the floor and questioning their results. And that's what we have to do right now, is hold the Democrat establishment accountable for what they're trying to do, make them pay the price if they try to bring these liberal policies into Annapolis, and I've been one that's been successful in fighting that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. With introductions behind us, we are going to move into the question portion of this forum. The first question is going to be about transportation and healthcare. And Rick, I am going to direct the first question to you. Residents of rural counties have difficulty with transportation to healthcare facilities. How would you assist residents of Maryland's 36th district in accessing vital healthcare services?
It's a great question, and I do believe that we need to support people who have transportation difficulties getting to and from medical facilities. It's important. It's a health issue, and I think Queen Anne's County should be a leader, and District 36 should be a leader in helping people get to and from medical care. Right now, we have a lot of different transportation options for people, but I've heard that, well, maybe it's not accessible in terms of timing, or it could be a little bit expensive, this, that, and the other. But I think maybe we have to take a common sense approach at this. And the way I look at it is the physicians, your doctor knows your need for medical attention, your need for medical care, how often you need to go and where you need to go. I would suggest perhaps that the doctors would be able to write, similar to a prescription, but a transportation voucher that they could be assigned a certain number of rides per week, per month, however it's gauged, because they have the best handle on what you need in terms of your transportation and where you need to get to. So I think a combination of that, along with, I think we also have some volunteer organizations. I'm hearing now we have organizations volunteering to drive people to get abortions across state lines. I'm pretty sure we can probably find some people also who would like to partner and help people get back and forth to their medical facilities. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rick. And Steve, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, Sam. This is something that we've addressed very specifically. 3 years ago, I passed legislation, the Rural Health Care Collaborative, that took a look at rural health care, especially in the counties of District 36, but more specifically through the entire Mid-Shore region, the 5 counties that make up the counties that Shore Regional Health is responsible for. And in looking at this, we looked very specifically at transportation and the lack of access that many people have into getting to medical appointments and doctor's visits. One of the things that we were able to come up with is the mobile wellness team. And those in Kent County might have seen we have 2 mobile health team units that travel across the county and actually bring health care to the individuals that lack transportation. Those mobile health teams have an RN, a nurse RN, a social worker, and 2 community health advocates. And that was a big win that we were able to just get 2 years ago, again, with Shore Regional Health. We also are looking at a number of government agencies and independent businesses that are willing to help out with this concern. But we are seeing it not only here, all throughout the nation. Transportation to rural healthcare practitioners is a concern. We are trying also to open up as many primary care physicians as we can and try to spread them out over the different counties to make sure that individuals have access to the most important health care, and that's preventative health care. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. And Heather, the same question.
I certainly appreciate the senator voting for good bills that others decided to do Queen Anne's County has the MITCH program. It's the Mobile Integrated Community Health that uses nurses, paramedics to do home checks and well checks. And I would like to expand on that because I do believe that it is a good model. But also I would like to make use of GNAs, that's geriatric nursing assistants, and CNAs, certified nursing assistants, to bring the paramedicine community together to actually do in-home care. I've worked as a geriatric nursing assistant for the last 4 years, and I do in-home care. And I can't tell you how valuable that is to have that option to provide in-home care, because many seniors want to stay in their homes. I also support school-based health centers. Now, this is something that is coming. I am going to ask for it to be halted until I can put in an emergency bill to increase the standards in our healthcare system, because right now the senator voted for a bill, HB 22, that mandated the licensing of criminals in our healthcare system. So we need to make sure that we have the best healthcare providers for background checks or disciplinary records before we put them into our schools. And also, I'd like to use grants to expand county transportation. Right now we have a surplus in Maryland, and it seems like every other district gets a lot of stuff that we don't. So I would like to make use of that money and expand our county transportation. So I mean, that's what I propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Our second question relates to the environment. The University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science and the Scientific Technical Working Group of the Maryland Climate Change Commission projected significant sea level rise by 2050 for the East Coast, including the Chesapeake Bay. What will you do to address the associated threats? And Steve, I'm going to direct the question to you first.
Thank you, Sam. I'm assuming that you did not come up with this question, because I have talked to an extensive amount of Republican primary voters, and not one of them has brought up sea level rise. What they do bring up is rising gas prices. What they do bring up is rising costs of living, but never rising sea level prices. But let me tell you about why that's coming up and where we are right now as a national economy because of that. This liberal propaganda that we're seeing from legislators and people like AOC and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have now influenced Joe Biden into crushing America's independence on energy because of these ideas that they bring up that are designed to scare people, whether it's sea level rise or the world's going to end in 12 years. These types of things have now crushed our economy and caused gas prices to skyrocket as a result of that. So I have a feeling, I hope we're going to talk about the economy and inflation and gas prices, but I assure you that when I'm in Annapolis, I have fought every single piece of climate solutions acts that have come out to try to push forward this propaganda. Last year, we defeated the Climate Solutions Act. This year, we were basically able to completely gut that bill, that it really has no standing on it already. This was a bill that was going to try to take away electricity in the state of Maryland. They tried to take away natural gas in the state of Maryland and rely completely on electricity. Now, if we start to talk about some of these policies that we see from the Democratic elitist on what they are really doing when they talk about solar, when they talk about electric vehicles, and how they socialize those costs over everybody else, we'll start to see why this economy is in the shape it is in now, and it's because of those people.
Thank you, Steve. And Heather, the same question to you.
I believe that I come from a family of farmers, and a long family of farmers, and they were always very conservative. They had windmills and stuff like that. So I don't believe that caring about the environment and caring about the environment and energy and your impact on the environment is a liberal issue, because all of my family are conservatives. So specifically about the sea level issue, thank you for the question. So I believe in science on this issue, and I believe it is very important to address this issue. So I believe in advocating for cultivating natural environments along the coast called living shorelines. And basically what it means is stones are placed, smaller stones are placed, and aquatic grasses are planted to act as a barrier for the waves. And this helps control erosion. So on a smaller scale, like I said, we have a lot of grants coming in through the EPA. So on a smaller scale, I would like to address the use of tree boxes, rain gardens, vegetative swaths. Keeping the shorelines clean is really important because if logs and trash build up on the shorelines, it smothers the grass and it kills the natural grass. So also there is a bill, HR 4235, it's called the Living Shorelines Act, and it provides grants to states to work to keep the shorelines clean and to prevent the erosion. So I plan on working with members of Congress to get some of that grant money and to also help business owners and homeowners with grants to convert, by choice, voluntary, to convert their chlorine pools to saltwater pools, as it's much better for the environment, especially in this district. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. And finally, Rick, same question.
Thank you. You know, I've been around a little while, and you know, I believe that God created this earth, and I believe that the earth has ability to take care of itself in many ways, and I think that we as residents here on earth have the mandate to respect the earth, and I appreciate what Ms. Sinclair said about some natural solutions. I think it makes a lot of sense. But you know, we cannot worship Mother Earth. We live here. We have dominion over Mother Earth, and like I said, God created it, and He's going to take care of it. You know, I see a lot of hypocrisy in this climate change, and that, you know, rich people are still buying beachfront property. I'm not sure why. If we're going to, you know, be underwater by 2050, we see people spending millions of dollars. And I also don't think that any effort we could do here in the United States, if we all just held our breath and didn't move for the next 20 years, it's not going to solve the climate change problem across the world. We just don't have enough horsepower to solve this by ourselves. We can be participants. We can make common sense solutions, as Ms. Sinclair suggested. But I see a lot of hypocrisy in the whole move, as Senator suggested, and I'm just not willing to go there. I just have too much faith in God and faith in man to be afraid. You know, you hear a lot of this, and it really is just manipulation. It's just fear manipulation. Our government has learned that if they can make us fear something, they can make us move in whatever direction they choose. And I'll fight against that manipulation with the last breath in my body. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I'm going to turn to a question from the audience, and if I so may, I'm going to take the opportunity to actually combine two questions. And Heather, you're going to be first up. What is your stance on gun safety, and do you advocate for arming teachers?
Thank you for the question. I do not advocate for arming teachers, but I do advocate for our resource officers in our schools being authorized to shoot and kill. My children are in these public schools, and I have been worried about their safety every single day that they're in there. And what we just saw is we saw the police fail to act, and a mom who has no training whatsoever pushed past the police to get her kids out of that school. So that's my stance on that. And I do think that as far as the gun safety, we're not going to be safer by stripping away our constitutional rights. I was giving the AQ rating by the NRA. I'm a strong 2A supporter. I'm also a strong supporter of public safety. And while we talk about some of the ways that we can get access, expand access to mental health, to catch these problems before they start, as I said, the senator voted for HB 22 that mandated the licensing of those with criminal records, including sex offenders, in our healthcare system, and that includes mental health, that includes professionals who are working with children. So we have a cart before the horse here. And everything that I've done, almost all of my bills have been about public safety and protecting people, especially protecting people in healthcare. So I do agree that we need a stronger healthcare system, that we need some interventions in place. If you see something, say something. But I don't think we're going to be safer by stripping our rights away, because what's next? What other rights are going to be taken away in this country because some population of people deem it as wrong or a threat? So I'm for public safety. I want to get in there, put me in that seat, and I'm going to clean up your healthcare system. I'm going to make sure that the healthcare providers that are in these schools are top quality. They don't have a disciplinary Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Same question, Rick.
Thank you. I'm a strong supporter of 2A. I own a firearm, and I tell you right now, I feel a lot safer if I knew that there were some good people in this audience with guns rather than maybe potentially only the bad people that might want to do harm. Okay? I think public is served well by responsible people having their constitutional right to bear arms and to protect themselves and defend those around them. As far as schools are concerned, I don't think we just need armed teachers or just a school resource officer. You see, a person in uniform is a target. If you're going to go in, you know you're going to go for the person who has the gun. They're the person in the uniform. I would like to see ununiformed, very anonymous people in schools, whether it's a lunch lady, a custodian, a guidance counselor, a principal. I'd like to have people who have already passed background checks, mental health checks, to make sure that if someone comes in, they can in fact pull the trigger, and they will run toward the problem instead of running away from the problem. They won't be wearing a target on their back because they won't have the uniform on them, but they'll be highly trained, and they'll be able to protect our children, and they won't be targeted because they have a uniform on. I do believe our children deserve safety. I don't think they're getting it right now. I think we've made some attempts, but we do need to make sure that the criminals know if they come into our schools, they may not ever go back home again.
Thank you, Rick. And Steve, same question.
Well, I think the Supreme Court just made all of us a lot safer when they just ruled that we are all able to carry a firearm with us. The fact that there should not be a government test to allow us to utilize our Second Amendment rights. What we see in Annapolis all too often when they talk about gun safety is they go after law-abiding gun owners. They don't talk about all the guns that are in Baltimore that are stolen. That's what we talk about there. What we try to do is get those guns off the street. Illegal guns are in Baltimore, and that's what's causing the crime. Now, with what the Supreme Court said, we will be safer as a result of that. We now have the opportunity to make sure that we can protect ourselves rather than just the bad guys having guns. With respect to teachers, I'm not against a teacher wanting to have a firearm. I do, and I did vote for school resource officers. I did vote to have more secure schools with respect to locks and doors and things of that nature. We do have to make our schools safer. But at the end of the day, bad people are going to find ways to get guns. And we have to find ways to address that. We have to find ways to make sure that that is not the case. We have to make sure that every time Annapolis comes up, when we again introduce the Violent Firearms Offender Act, that would make it a felony if you use a stolen handgun in a crime, the Democrats continue to push back on that. They don't want to see any additional penalties or criminal offenses to people that have illegal guns, and that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that Baltimore and places like that where they have illegal firearms gets cleaned up. People have talked about stop and frisk. There's many different ways to do that, but that's our real problems regarding gun safety.
Thank you, Steve. Our next question pertains to infrastructure. And Rick, the question is going to be directed to you first. What legislation would you support to ensure that federal infrastructure funds for broadband are distributed to the underserved rural areas in Maryland?
Well, first of all, I am a big advocate for infrastructure. I think our children have spent way too much time sitting in front of McDonald's or wherever they might be able to get a Wi-Fi signal somewhere up in North County, in some of our other rural areas. I would back legislation and that would provide the proper tools for them so that they can have a fair opportunity to get an education, just like a child that lives in an urban area with high-speed broadband or whatever the latest iteration might be. So yes, I would support it. I believe it's a need, and I believe our children are suffering because we do not have it yet. I also think that a good infrastructure with internet would help us with our commercial base. Might attract some large corporations because right now some of our areas are just simply aren't ready for large corporations to come in and put a drain on the signal. And I'd also like to circle back just for a moment to something I said earlier about the vouchers for rides. You know, I didn't complete that, but I think the vouchers could then be whoever, whether it's Lyft, Uber, whoever might be, a county ride, I don't know, but another faith organization, a private, public, I could be reimbursed for those vouchers. The doctor writes, gives you 2 or 3 trips a week, whatever it is, and those providers would be reimbursed either by the county or by the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Steve, what legislation would you support to ensure that federal infrastructure funds for broadband are distributed to the underserved rural areas in Maryland?
Well, Sam, I sponsored and we were able to pass the Rural Broadband Access Act 2 years ago. It was a very interesting piece of legislation that allowed Chop Tank Electric to utilize their infrastructure to carry broadband wiring and access to underserved areas in the Eastern Shore. Without getting into too much specifics, there is a regulated side and deregulated side to all electric utility companies. This allowed us to use the regulated assets to expand broadband. So that's been very successful. I've talked with Chop Tank Electric since then. They have now hooked up their 1,000th new customer as a result of this. So that's what we've done on the state side. On the federal side, Chop Tank and many other companies have put in applications for federal funding in order to bring money back to the state of Maryland. I have supported their requests in doing so. We are seeing a lot of that federal funding get into this area, especially on the Eastern Shore, which has been very good. The interesting thing too, it can be not necessarily, doesn't have to be infrastructure, but it can also be access. So one of the things that we are, I'll say fighting with, but we want to make sure that most of the money goes to infrastructure. What we're seeing is a lot of that money wants to go to access, being that it drives down the cost of internet access. I think in the rural counties here, it's more important that at least we get that infrastructure in place first. Let the competitive markets decide what the right price is for customers, but let's see that money go into the most important aspects, and that's creating more infrastructure to get broadband to more people on the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Steve. And Heather, what legislation would you support to ensure that federal infrastructure funds for broadband are distributed to the underserved rural areas in Maryland?
Again, I thank the senator for his vote on the bills of others. That was really important for our district. But the job is not done. And the only thing I can say about that is working with the stakeholders. This is really a big issue for Congress. But what I can do on the state level is pass legislation to make sure that this district is a priority, so that when a bill passes, a funding bill passes in Congress, that we are the first ones to get the funding for infrastructure. I think we have a great start here, but it's not good enough. If it was good enough, I wouldn't be here today. So, and I agree that we should first work on the infrastructure. I disagree somewhat in that it should not also address the cost, because we saw with COVID and with the schools closing that the schools had to come up with hotspots because children who live in poverty and the underserved populations do not have access to the internet. So I think that's also a huge issue that we need to address moving forward. And, you know, I'm really good with, I've worked with lawmakers across the country on both sides of the aisle, just mostly, you know, with Republicans. So I'm really good. I'm really resourceful. I'm good about bringing people together and getting solutions and getting things done. I've been very effective on many issues, so that's what I propose doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Our next question also comes from the audience. What is your, and Rick, we're going to direct this question to you first. What is your position on a woman's right to choose and if and when to start a family? Let me repeat that. What is your position on a woman's right to choose and if and when to start a family? To you.
Well, first of all, I am 100% pro-life. I believe God is the giver of life. I believe he chooses when a sperm fertilizes an egg and life begins. I do understand that there are situations that truly, in my opinion, fall under the medical term of do no harm, under the oath of do no harm, which would be to save the mother's life if that's what the family believes is best. But I really am 100% pro-life, and I believe that God gives life. And the choice to start a family really is when you're in the heated moment. When you're in the heated moment, that's when you make the decision whether or not you want to start a life. It's not after the fact. It's prior to the fact. It requires a little personal discipline, something that our society sort of lost touch with. But it's quite important. You start a family when you decide to engage in sexual conduct. That's just the way it works. That's how we procreate. You can take other measures, whether it's morning after, whether it's birth control, whatever. But when you decide to engage in sexual activity, you have started down the path of starting a family. So I'm 100% pro-life, and I believe life begins at conception. I believe that maybe there are some medical situations, but honestly, the whole idea of abortion, I struggle to understand how it is under the guise of the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm. Because in fact, an abortion is an attack on what I believe to be a human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Steve, this question is directed at you. What is your position on a woman's right to choose, and if and when to start a family?
Well, again, I think we had another very meaningful ruling from the Supreme Court this week that basically said Roe v. Wade was not constitutional. And it was something that we all recognized was eventually going to happen, but these decisions are made at the state level. I have been endorsed by Maryland Right to Life. We had two very significant abortion bills in the General Assembly this year, basically with the understanding that Roe v. Wade would be overturned. One was called the Abortion Care Access Act, that basically makes it easier in the state of Maryland to perform abortions. They are taking all kinds of different medical professionals, medical physicians, and allowing them to perform abortions. So it's not just a specialized physician anymore. Under this piece of legislation, it would be RNs, it would be nurse practitioners, it would be all different types of people can now be trained to perform abortion. So I was very against that piece of legislation. I think that type of legislation makes it much more unhealthy and unsafe for women. During the testimony, we actually had a woman that came into my committee that actually tried to tell us that this was a job creation bill. This was a job creation bill. That's how Marylanders are looking at this right now, because if you look at the map, Maryland is the southernmost state that will allow abortions. And they are trying to find any way possible to bring individuals into the state for their abortion care. And I was largely against that bill.
Thank you, Steve. And Heather, what is your position on a woman's right to choose, and if and when to start a family?
Well, I'm the only candidate up here who risked my life not once but twice to give life. I almost died giving birth to my first son, who ended up being an emergency C-section. And I ended up, after that C-section, it was an hour later, almost hemorrhaging to death. My position is that it's decided law in the state of Maryland. And my other position is that I have worked with victims. I myself am a juvenile trafficking survivor, and I've worked to help other trafficking survivors, young girls who are being trafficked. And so I cannot say that I agree with this notion that abortion is not necessary in some circumstances. I'll tell you what I am willing to do, because I do see a necessary here, is that a friend of mine had a pregnancy that she later found out after 20 weeks was terminal. And then she didn't want to go into the hospital to watch her baby die because it's on the same floor where everyone is celebrating babies living. So I would like to expand access to perinatal hospice to give women the option when they have terminal pregnancies so that they don't have to go to the hospital and hear the cheering and the tears of joy while they have lost their baby. So that I am willing to do. As far as willing to, start a family, I think we all have that choice. So that's, and I'm a candidate who believes in lowering taxes. And that issue right there, they have continued to expand Medicaid. Over half of all births in this country are paid with tax dollars right now that expands Medicaid. I want to lower our taxes and help the people that are already here. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. This question also comes from the audience. And Steve, it's going to be directed to you first. In view of the recent Supreme Court decision, what steps will you take to bring Maryland in line with the recent Second Amendment ruling from the Supreme Court?
Sam, this is a piece of legislation that we add every year that is basically saying that you should not have to have a good and substantial reason to have a concealed carry permit. Unfortunately, we have not been able to get that through the Democrat-controlled Maryland legislature, but it is something we focused on every year, and I'm sure we will bring this back immediately to make sure that we are able to comply with what the Supreme Court has just ruled. With respect to where we are with that, I've talked to the Senate President the day that the ruling came out. They are going to try immediately to find reasons on why they should not have to comply with this. So there will be a battle. They will come up and they'll try to find different reasons to make it more difficult to be able to carry a firearm to protect yourself. They will not do anything to make it any more difficult for people to have illegal guns. And this will be the fight that we continue to have over and over again in Annapolis. But again, we will bring back that bill again with not having to have good and substantial reason. Basically, you have the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution that says you're able to own a firearm to protect yourself, and that's what we'll stand on.
Thank you, Steve. And Heather, in view of the Supreme Court decision, what steps will you take to bring Maryland in line with the Second Amendment decision?
I actually do agree with the senator. I was there when that piece of legislation passed in the room, and it didn't pass the first time in committee, the good and substantial, and they did they went out of the committee room and they came back in and they did a recount, and all of a sudden it passed. I agree that we need to remove those standards. So, for example, the senator was a co-sponsor on a bill that allowed non-citizens to become police officers. And if that bill had passed, it would have given non-citizens the good and substantial reason, the right to carry, when someone like me doesn't, a survivor. So I think we need to remove this good and substantial reason. How far do we have to go? What about domestic violence victims who are in the midst of a divorce? What should that standard be, that she has the right to carry a firearm? I mean, we live in a rural area. It would take 35 to 40 minutes for the police to get to my house. And I'm a single mom. So we're gonna fix this. Look, I'm for public safety. I've passed bills across the country to protect people, okay? But this was not a good standard, and it was definitely not a good standard when they wanted to pass it to allow non-citizens to have the right to carry a firearm when we don't, when good people don't have that standard, because the good and substantial means you have to be a police officer or work in a security job. But what about me? I'm a good person. I don't have a criminal record. I've done so many things to help people, but they wouldn't give me one. So I think we do need to address that. And again, I understand that this is an emotional issue, but I've spent the last 10 years passing legislation to protect people, and I'm going to continue to protect people, and I'm going to continue to protect your rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And Rick, In view of the Supreme Court decision, what steps will you take to bring Maryland in line with the Second Amendment decision?
Well, in the interest of time, I'll just try to be brief. I think we all agree up here on the panel that our rights have been infringed, and we're ready to release the citizens of the state of Maryland into the freedoms that our founders intended when they said that our right to bear arms shall not be infringed upon. I would also work to take a little closer look at the red flag laws out there. You know, they open up Pandora's box and open up what they consider good reason for what otherwise would be good people to be under the microscope and scrutiny and potentially lose their right to bear arms and protect themselves and their family. I do believe that some background checks should be in place in order to ensure our safety, but I really believe that the best signal that we can send to the criminal element out there that wants to terrorize us on the street is the fact that you may not be the only person out there locked and ready to go, locked and loaded, okay? They need to know that. I don't want any unnecessary death, but I certainly am sick of being threatened by knowing that only the bad guys have guns in the state of Maryland on the streets. So I'm ready to bring your freedoms back.
Thank you, Rick. And before I ask the next question, I just want to remind the audience that if you have a question yourself, please raise your hand and, or at least ensure that in your raised hand you have your note card filled out with a question, and one of our designated runners around the room will be able to take that and drop it off to our event organizers here. So the next question pertains to the economy, and Heather, I'm going to direct this question to you first. Given rising energy costs, ongoing supply chain issues, and inflation, what will you do to ensure businesses in Maryland's 36th district can continue to grow?
Thank you for the question. The first thing is the gas tax, and I didn't support them going into special session because I think Governor Hogan should just do his job. He can call a state of energy emergency right now. He just chooses not to do it. And a special session would cost $20,000. It might even be more than that. So it's estimated your baseline is $20,000 a day. And you're going to hear the senator say that he thinks that's a good use of your money, and I don't. So I think Hogan should do his job. But if he doesn't, as soon as I'm elected, I'm going to address and bring you tax relief. I also believe in fiscal localism. So other places have implemented this where they actually create, it's totally voluntary, they create their own currency in rural areas. And basically because small businesses on the shore, they're not, huge businesses, they can't compete with these really large businesses. So by creating your own currency, and it would be for the entire Eastern Shore, totally voluntary, it would give small business owners a boost. It would keep the money local. It would give them rewards and benefits that they're not getting right now to help our small businesses. It would also help farmers a lot for them to be included on that program. Again, it's totally voluntary. I plan to remove some of the barriers in our jobs, and people get scared when I say deregulation, but understand you have higher standards to work with the dead than the living in healthcare in Maryland. So there's been studies that are done that says Maryland has too many regulated professions and the standards are too high. So I'm going to address that. I'm going to make it easier for good people that can pass a background check to get into good paying jobs. And I'm going to cut reckless spending. The Democrats, I've been there for 10 years, the Democrats spend a lot of our money on things that just don't work. And in that way, I'm definitely very conservative because I believe in using your money wisely and bringing things that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And Rick, given rising energy costs, ongoing supply chain issues, and inflation, what will you do to ensure businesses in Maryland's 36th district continue to grow?
It's a very interesting question because, most of these problems, in my opinion, are man-made. They're made at the federal level. We had our president stop gas production in America, open it up and bless it in other areas. Other factors at a national level have done everything they can to crack down on us and tell us that Putin has so much power that it's Putin's tax hike or Putin's price hike. I just simply don't buy it. I think that we have forces within our own country that are looking to take down this economy for their own good, in particular the left wing of the Democrat Party. I think that we can improve our economy for all Marylanders if we look at the programs that are on the books. Let's really take a look and see how much money is wasted. Useless waste in Maryland is hurting our economy. In terms of the gas tax, yeah, it's a great idea to relieve a little bit, but it's simply saying, look over here when the real problem is over here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Steve, given rising energy costs, ongoing supply chain issues, and inflation, what will you do to ensure businesses in Maryland's 36th district continue to grow?
Well, first and foremost, we need to stop the liberal policies that are being passed in Annapolis. Energy costs have skyrocketed because of these policies. More specifically, when we talk about renewable energy and the credits that are given for that, we're seeing that costs for electricity are being socialized through the entire state. So for instance, if you have solar panels on your house, and of course we know that the sun doesn't shine at night, and you're getting electricity at night, that electricity is being provided to you through the infrastructure of our electric grid at the cost to every other ratepayer in the state of Maryland through a program they call net energy, net metering. So that's one policy that has caused electricity prices to go up, and consumers and constituents, as we talk to all the time, see their electric bills going up. Gas is going up again because of what we're seeing at the federal level, because Joe Biden has decided that he's going to listen to AOC and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren rather than going forward with American independence on our energy, as we've seen before. The gas tax, you're damn right. For $20,000, 2 days, I'd bring that General Assembly back into session to pass meaningful gas tax cuts. Not only of the current gas tax, that's at 37 cents, but on July 1st, it's going to go up another 8 cents, and it will continue to go up every year. I think it's important for Marylanders to get some type of relief as a result of that. And if the only way if that can happen is through the General Assembly, then I would certainly go back in order to do that. When we hear from the Democrats on why they don't want to do it, it's because they're concerned all of a sudden about roads and bridges. Yet they will pass legislation after legislation allowing for more electric vehicles, which guess what? They don't pay for the roads and bridges either. So for that, it seems to be okay, but for this, it doesn't seem to be.
Thank you, Steve. Rick, this question is going to be directed to you. What do you hope to accomplish in the Maryland Senate in the next 4 years, if elected?
Well, you know, right now I think that things in our state, if I can use an analogy, is kind of like a plate of spaghetti with a lot of noodles just sort of all, you know, laying there in disarray. And it's time we begin to pull them out and lay them down and really take a good look. Once again, I think waste is important to take a look at. We have way too many regulations. We just don't experience the freedoms of America that our founders really wanted us to experience, I think. And what I will do is I'll bring a fresh voice, I'll bring a godly perspective, and I'll bring the perspective of someone who is not there to serve themselves. I'm not interested in anything beyond serving you. You see, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this as a public service. I don't need this to enhance my career. I don't need this to take me to the next level. I simply want to do this as an extension of my public service. I've pastored for many years and, you know, in business. So I think I'm ready to bring some common sense solutions. You know, my mantra has always been God, family, country, common sense, and Constitution. When we get to the point where we need more than that, I think we've gone beyond what our founders envisioned as a free America. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Steve?
Thanks, Sam. What I hope to accomplish, I hope to continue to be able to fight for our conservative values in Annapolis, to continue to stand up to the liberal Democrat propaganda that they continue to pass through, and to be able to deliver results for the Eastern Shore. More specifically, we're seeing pieces of legislation come from a very younger Democrat Party. The old blue dog Democrats, moderate Democrats, are gone. Unfortunately, we've lost them. We lost the reason in the Maryland State Senate. Now all we have is a bunch of bad ideas that come from a bunch of younger senators that are trying to make a name for themselves. We hadn't had that before. So the fight now is stronger than ever. The fight now has to be brought by experienced legislators, not by experimental people that want to go out and try something, but people that understand how Annapolis works, that have the knowledge on these issues to be able to fight and to hold these legislators accountable. And for people that don't think just because a bill isn't killed or doesn't get a vote on the floor, we kill more bills in our committee that never get voted on. And that's done through the process of a committee hearing, through asking the right questions, through putting them on the spot, for making them accountable, for making them be responsible for the bills that they try to put forward. I'll continue to do that in Annapolis. I've done an excellent job of doing that. We have saved a lot, especially for our businesses. On the committee that I sit on, we've saved a lot of regulations. The most recent was the essential worker bill that actually was a bill that was going to make businesses pay hazard pay to employees that worked during a health emergency. We were able to kill that bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And Heather, as soon as I find it on my paper again, what do you hope to accomplish in the Maryland Senate in the next 4 years if elected?
I'm going to be so excited because, as I said, I've been doing this for the past 10 years. My kids have grown up. In the Maryland legislature, I have pictures of most of the politicians. They know my kids. I just made them feel old because my son turned 18 this year. Again, I've fought special interests in Annapolis. I've actually been physically assaulted by the special interest in Annapolis. I'm going to be excited because you're finally going to have a fighter on your side. You're going to have somebody that cares more about people than their political career and the lifestyle, the celebrity lifestyle of a politician who does not fight for you. So I'm excited because I'm going to deliver to you what I've already done. I was responsible for passing criminal background checks for medical doctors and mental health professionals in the state of Maryland and several other states. I also had a bill passed to give the homeless population free birth certificates, and that helps them so much because they lose their identity documents all the time. I also passed a bill that required the position letters of lobbyists to be with the bill. So now you have access to the special interests and the corporate lobbyists, their positions online, which you did not have before. So I'm going to continue to fight for you like I have been fighting for you, but I can't do it anymore as a citizen. I need you to empower me, to put me in that seat so I have the full force behind me so that I can fight for you. You are not getting your money's worth, and you are not being fought for in Annapolis. So please vote for me because I will fight for you because you deserve a fighter. You do. That's why I've been fighting this whole time, and I haven't been paid a dime to do it. Because you deserve it and because I believe in you. Please believe in me. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And this is going to be our final question before we enter into closing remarks. And Rick, I'm going to direct this question to you first. What needs to be done to make it more financially attractive for retirees to live in Maryland?
Well, the first answer is to find a way to give them some tax breaks. I know there was a start this year toward that end. So I think, Maryland offers a lot of great advantages over many other states. And, people want to live here. People want to retire here. I'd like to retire here. Wish that global warming thing would come into play and make it, a 70-year round here in Maryland, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But nonetheless, I think that the seniors need to have tax breaks, tax incentives, and because, seniors bring a certain quality to a community that no other group can bring. Seasoning, experience, love, gentleness. So they're precious. We need to maintain them. I also think we need to do something for our first responders, our police officers. to make their life here in Maryland a little bit better, because they sign on the line to put their life on the line for us. And I'd like to see them have a little bit more consideration. But I think it revolves around taxes pretty much for the seniors, and anything else we can do to make the life of a senior a little bit easier here in Maryland would be something I would be definitely open to. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Steve, what needs to be done to make it more financially attractive for retirees to live in Maryland?
Well, Sam, I've focused the better part of my years in Annapolis in trying to get tax relief for seniors. And this past year, we had some successes. My piece of legislation will now allow counties to reduce property tax for seniors and veterans. And they had that capability at some point, but there were constraints on it, on how much it could be and how long it could last. This removes the constraints. So different counties now will be able to do what they want to do in order to keep seniors and veterans in their counties and in Maryland. I also put in a piece of legislation, the Retirement Tax Reduction Act, that was going to do a subtraction modification for income tax for seniors. That bill did not actually pass, but what they did is they folded my bill into the governor's bill, which is very interesting, but the governor did do a lot of concessions this year, so he was going to get a win somewhere. But his retirement tax elimination, which really isn't a complete elimination, but that bill now has a tax credit. So seniors, the single senior will get a $1,000 tax credit, and a couple will now get a $1,750 tax credit in order to help with the overall cost of taxes in Maryland. So we need to do more. And again, I thought my bill was a better piece of legislation that would have been, like I said, a subtraction modification and allowed a greater deduction. But we're going to see that soon, I think. We've been able to work on the Democrat majority and getting them to a spot where they recognize the value of our seniors, in the fact that they're usually volunteers, the fact that they're helping in so many different aspects of our community. We need to make sure that they can stay here and they can stay here affordably. And these two pieces of legislation we passed last year are very substantial and will keep seniors here.
Thank you, Steve. That concludes the question portion of today's forum. We are now going to enter into closing remarks. You will each be given 2 minutes to deliver your closing statements. Heather, would you like to begin?
Thank you so much for the league for putting this on. Thank you for the questions. I'm just going to talk to you like a real person, because I'm not a politician and I'm not running to be a politician. The senator's going to talk about what matters is experience, and that's exactly what I have. But I'm also effective. And I've never given a dime to a politician, because I don't believe in that, because they're paid with our salary. They are going to be paid $65,000 a year from $51,000 because they voted to give themselves a raise. I'm here to fight for you. And while I'm up here, I'm just going to say that no matter what happens in this election, to the people that are watching at home, I've always been the underdog. I'm the underdog in this race. And you can do anything that you want to do. Don't ever give up fighting for people. And when you have the chance, you have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of people like I have, do it. It's so worth it. It's so worth it, because I believe in doing what you love. And what I love is fighting for you. It's fighting for people. That's why I've done it for so long. I have gray hairs grow in with build numbers on it because it stresses me out. Put me in that seat to fight for you. And you will not be disappointed, because I'm a fighter and my passion is people. I'm not a politician. I'm not running to be a politician. But I need your help, because I can't continue to fight as a citizen in Annapolis by myself. And you are in danger. You are. By the inexperience in Annapolis, by politicians don't care. But you need a fighter. So put me in that seat. Empower me to empower you by putting me in that seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Rick? closing remarks.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to address each and every one of you. Thank you for allowing me to voice my opinions and to create contrast between my colleagues and myself, to allow you to make an informed decision. And I hope that you will vote for me on July 19th. But let me just recap a little bit. I'm your America First candidate. I am endorsed by Dan Cox. I'm endorsed by Doug Mastriano, two very conservative people. I'm pro-life. I am against CRT in schools. I want your children to receive an education, not an indoctrination. I'm strong on 2A, and I'm not going to go to Annapolis to go along to get along. I want to be your voice in Annapolis. I am unable to do that unless I have your input, so I'll make myself available to you. I remember 4 years ago, Delegate Jacobs talking about experience. He said, yeah, we need experienced people in there because they need to get into those back rooms to make the deals. Just sort of didn't hit a good note with me. But that's what experience will get you, in the back rooms to make the deals. As you recall, our current senator was appointed by a Democrat Governor O'Malley, and because the other candidate, Mike Smeagol, was far more conservative, and I don't suppose Mr. O'Malley wanted to strengthen the opposition. I'm for term limits. I'm not here to create a career. I'm not interested in that. But I am interested in truth. I suggest each of you go to the American Conservative Union. Go to ratings.conservative.org. Look up your current senator's ratings, and remember, those scores are out of 100. Out of 100. I want to be your voice in Annapolis. I want you to visit my website, voterickbowers.com, and I would appreciate your vote on July 19th, because I will go to Annapolis, and I will represent you and your conservative needs with honor and dignity and respect. But I am a fighter. I won't retreat. I'll just reload. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. Mr. Hershey.
Well, thank you very much, and again, thank you all for coming out here today. Regardless of what my opponents are saying, I can assure you I am one of the most conservative members in the Maryland Senate. I have one of the highest scores in the information that Mr. Bowers is talking about in the Senate. When we talk about experience, I can assure you what we don't need is a former Democrat coming in and representing the 36th district. What we need is somebody that understands how Annapolis works. What we need is someone that understands how to make the fights and has continued to do that and proven to do that. I'm the only one at this table that has done that. I'm the only one that at this table that can continue to do this in Annapolis. And it takes a lot more than just making a bunch of campaign promises that I will do something. It takes experience. I have a track record for doing that. Free Maryland came out last night and gave me a 100% score on my fighting for businesses and against business regulations. As I said, I've been endorsed by NRA, Maryland Right to Life. Those endorsements don't come easy. It comes because of the work that I've done in Annapolis. And let me tell you one thing. When it comes to fighting inside those white lines, when it comes to doing the work, there's nobody that works harder than I do in Annapolis. And it's not just understanding a bill or talking about a bill or thinking that they do it. It's about the research, it's about getting involved, and it's about fighting. I've had several of my colleagues say that they don't want Steve Hershey getting up on the floor and debating their bills. And that's not because I'm going along to get along. That's because I'm making them accountable for their legislation and the things that they're trying to do. So I ask that you please vote for me. I have won 2 elections since the appointment that my colleague talks about, because I did get more votes than any from all Central Committee members. But I ask for your vote again on July 19th.
And that concludes this afternoon's forum. I would just like to extend a thank you to Ms. Heather Sinclair, Mr. Rick Bowers, Mr. Stephen Hershey, and the League of Women Voters for putting this very informative forum on. Thank you to all the candidates. Best of luck. And thank you to the audience for being here and participating. Thank you all.
My name is Patricia Jameson, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Queen Anne's County. Welcome and thank you for participating in this pre-election primary forum for Democratic candidates seeking the U.S. House of Representatives District 1 vacancy. This forum is a collaborative effort by Kent, the Midshore, including Caroline, Dorchester, and Talbot, and Queen Anne's counties. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose membership is open to anyone 16 years of age, anyone who's at least 16 years of age. Our league on the shore believes that democracy works best when voters make informed decisions, and forums such as this are opportunities for us to do that. Our leagues also publish a voter's guide, and some of you may have received it in your newspapers, and if you didn't, there are copies out there on the table. You can pick up when you leave if you don't have one. It's really a wonderful resource because it gives information about local and state offices. Thanks to the Kent County League, okay, because the Kent County League took the lead in planning this forum. Also, a special thanks to the people back there in the back, the Queen Anne's County TV, for filming and producing this event, and to all of you who are participating here in person, and some people are participating by Facebook. And thanks especially to the candidates. Thanks to you for your willingness to serve our community and for being part of our forum today. At this time, I'd like to turn the forum over to Mr. Sam Shogay, the moderator. He's a founder of River and Roads Consulting, a past director of the Kent County Chamber of Commerce, and probably a lot of other things that I don't know. And he's going to take over, and he will be introducing the candidates and conducting the forum. Thank you, Sam. I don't think I have anything that belongs to you. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this League of Women Voters Forum for the Democratic candidates for the Maryland's 1st U.S. Congressional District. Today, we have before us Heather Mazier, as well as David Harden. I would like to ask the audience to please turn off or silence your phones. The League allows no demonstrations, including applause, during the forum. We will ask for applause at the end. Any person engaging in a demonstration of any kind during this event will be escorted from the auditorium. The forum will begin with a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate. Initial questions prepared by the League and printed in the program were given to the candidates at least 10 days ago. The order in which candidates will take the first question was determined by random draw earlier today. Therefore, questions will be alternated among the participants. I will repeat the question for each candidate if requested to do so. Please keep in mind that this is not a debate, so no candidate may interrupt the answer of another candidate. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to open, to answer a question, and 3 minutes to close. The timing is set by an automated clock, visible only to the moderator and the candidates. And I will call time if the candidate does not see that time has expired. We will take questions from the audience. When you all came in, you should have been presented with a note card. Please, if you have a question, fill out that note card, write legibly so I can read the question, and then simply raise your hand or raise your card, and one of our designated runners around the room will be able to pick it up and then pass it on to the event organizers. The forum will last 90 minutes, and we will conclude at 4:45 p.m. At the conclusion of the forum, please show your appreciation for the candidates' participation in this forum with your applause, and don't forget to vote. So at this time, we are going to begin with opening remarks. Heather, you drew the first position, so you will have 2 minutes to deliver your opening remarks.
Thank you, Moderator Shogay. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the collaboration between all the leagues to bring us together today, and Dave Harden for participating with me. I'm Heather Mazier. I am a skilled legislator with experience at the federal, state, and local level. I have a reputation as a pragmatic consensus builder who knows how to get things done. I take plans and turn them into action, ideas and turn them into law. When I was in the state legislature for 8 years, I had an opportunity to pass meaningful laws to expand health insurance for children and families, reproductive health care for women. I protected our environment by protecting us against the dangers of fracking. And I worked tirelessly on economic solutions that supported small businesses and middle-class families. When I retired from elective office, I moved to my family farm in Chestertown, where when I wasn't busy working on the land, I was running a nonprofit organization that I founded to address the growing divisions in our civic life. That is why when democracy came under a violent attack on January 6th, at an insurrection in our state capitol, in our federal capitol building, I felt called to return to this arena, to hold Andy Harris accountable for his actions that day. And as we've seen in the January 6th hearings, we need leaders to stand up to do what is right. I'm running for Congress to be your fierce advocate, to be a representative who wakes up every day looking for ways to tirelessly advocate for our lives and our livelihoods here in the 1st Congressional District. I'm excited to bring my brand of energetic leadership to the Congress to represent you. I hope during the course of this forum that I earn your vote and your support.
Thank you very much, Heather. David, 2-minute opening remarks.
Thank you, Sam, and to the audience, thank you for being here. And of course, to Heather, thank you for being in the arena. Democracy is a gift. It's not self-sustaining. We have to fight for it. We have to earn it. We have to earn it every generation. Right now, we're facing a perfect storm of risk and threats. You know it. You see it. You saw it earlier this week with the Supreme Court decision to undermine 50 years of precedent and to retract basic reproductive rights. You saw it this week with the January 6th hearings, where authoritarianism is rising, where democracy is at risk. And you see it in our economy with inflation and a division with rural communities and urban and suburban communities where there are grave grievances in our rural communities. They feel left behind and forgotten. And this is what Donald Trump took advantage of. Now, I was President Obama's assistant administrator for democracy, conflict, and humanitarian assistance around the world. I stood face to face with autocrats. I know when we can lose democracy. I'm running because on January 6th, my son, an Air Force officer, was deployed overseas. And he called me and he said, "Dad, my allies and friends in the Operations Center in Qatar are asking me, are we in the middle of a civil war? What should I say?" That's why I'm running.
Thank you very much, David and Heather, for delivering your opening remarks. We are now going to move into the question portion of today's forum. The first question is going to be directed at you, Heather. It revolves around economic policy. And the question is, what legislation would you support that affects access to child care assistance for families?
We have a child care crisis in our communities. It's not available, and it's certainly not affordable. I've heard from families all throughout the 1st District that some are choosing not to have additional children because the cost of child care is as much as their housing payment. That's not okay. Oftentimes, this burden falls on the shoulders of women who have to make a decision whether or not they can join and participate in the economy or risk whether or not their children have safe, loving environments to care for them while they're in the workforce. But there are policy solutions that we can advocate to address this. When I was in the legislature, I was a huge proponent of universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds, and we can get this done at the national level. When we start school earlier, it takes the burden off of families to have to pay for that child care. And when kids start school earlier, it gives them a chance at addressing the achievement gap in the schools. We also can invest in money for small businesses and other employers to be able to incentivize and offer childcare as a benefit to their employees. And I believe the enhanced child tax credit that the Biden administration included in the American Recovery Plan was incredibly successful. It boosted the child tax credit significantly, drawing many, many families out of poverty during this pandemic crisis, and it no longer has been enhanced. I would like to extend that for at least 1 additional year as we work to get the pre-K initiatives and other child care assistance on the table. And finally, we don't have enough qualified providers. We need to focus on training and growing the number of good quality child care providers in our communities. And I'm excited to be a congresswoman to help us get that done.
Thank you, Heather. And David, what legislation would you support that affects access to child care assistance for families?
Thank you. Sharon and I raised 3 kids. It was not easy, but we were blessed and we were able to do it. And they all are in adulthood now, and you know what? They have apartments and they have health insurance, and that means we succeeded. So thank goodness for that. Childcare is a extraordinary stressor for young families. Here's what I support. The child tax credit that Joe Biden put out, but actually also had bipartisan support. I would go a step further. We reduced poverty for seniors by implementing a Social Security system. I think it's perfectly appropriate to, instead of child tax credits, which are subject to the whims of legislatures, to put that credit system into Social Security so that every family gets a benefit for the very early years of childhood. So, child tax credit, and if we can get it into the Social Security system, number 1. Number 2, I grew up in Carroll County. I went to public school. When I went to public school, we didn't have universal kindergarten. People are shocked when I tell them that. In Carroll County in the late 60s, we didn't have universal kindergarten. We didn't think it was necessary. We didn't think it mattered if the kids learned to read early or get ahead. Can you imagine? So of course now we have universal kindergarten, but we need universal pre-K, and I would support that as well. I think that's fundamental, not only for our families, but for our economy, so it can unleash the opportunities of parents that stay at home and work, that stay at home but could work, and for the next generation to learn the skills to claw back the economic opportunity that we're losing every day to China and Europe. So those are the policies I would support. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much, David. The next question revolves around women's health. And David, I'm going to direct this question to you first. What specific legislation would you support to maintain access to reproductive health care for women?
Yes, in my opening statement, I talked about the Supreme Court decision to wind back 50 years of precedent, to withdraw from women and men in the public space a constitutional right that has been on the books since 1972. That decision creates chaos and conflict in our society today. Right now we see states across the country carving back on those basic rights. But we're in a tough situation, let's be clear. Because those that sought to turn back Roe v. Wade worked very hard for 50 years. So I want to be straight with you. There's no easy answer forward. Here's what we can do. We can try to codify as much of Roe and Casey legal frameworks that's possible in the federal in Congress as federal law. It's an uphill battle. Pro-choice advocates aren't going to get what they want, but it's worth taking an effort to try to get some federal legislation as close as possible to the Roe and Casey framework. Second, if anything we've learned is that state legislatures count. It's really incumbent that at every state level, those who support reproductive rights get out, advocate, argue, vote, and take back the state legislatures.
Thank you, David. And Heather, what specific legislation would you support to maintain access to reproductive health care for women?
June 24th will be a date that we never forget. 50 years of settled law clawed back. Women turned into second-class citizens. We don't just need supporters of abortion health care in the Congress. We need fierce advocates. Because right now, our Congressman, Andy Harris, doesn't just want to have an abortion ban across the country. He wants to claw back every right we still hold on to here in Maryland. He's so extreme that he would not allow a woman to have abortion health care even if she's raped, even if there's incest involved, even if her life is in danger. This is completely and absolutely unacceptable and not in line with the values of our communities. We cannot compromise on these kinds of fundamental rights. I refuse to do anything less than codifying Roe in national federal law. We need to end the filibuster to try to get it done right now. And elections do matter. There are consequences. And if you woke up this week frustrated and angry and even feeling defeated, put all of that emotion and your anger, which is the energy of action, into electing representatives who have your back, who will fight like crazy. Because I refuse to go back to a world where women's lives are on the line. No more back alley abortions, no more coat hanger abortions. That's the world that the Trump-packed court is pushing us into right now, and we say no. In Maryland, we're still a safe haven. We have to help women in other states who need our help. Between the time of now and when we get this fixed at the federal level, send me to Congress to help get it done. I have the endorsement of Emily's List and Planned Parent Action Fund to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. The next question revolves around gun safety. And David, I'm going to direct this question to you first. Or no, excuse me, Heather, I'm going to direct the question to you first. Please supply your position on federal gun safety legislation.
Here on the Eastern Shore, gun ownership is a part of our identity. I grew up in a small town. I live on a farm. I have guns. I support the Second Amendment. And I also understand that with great rights come great responsibilities. I will not be a congresswoman like Andy Harris, who is owned by the NRA and the gun lobby. He stands in the way of important gun safety reforms that a supermajority of us in the country support. Getting good background checks and red flag laws, raising the age to purchase so that those who would do us harm don't have access to these weapons. The Supreme Court pushed another big blow this week in allowing anyone to conceal a weapon and carry a weapon in almost any place. This doesn't help us in this moment. My God, Uvalde and Buffalo, just the latest examples. We should be able to go to church, go grocery shopping. Our kids need to be able to go to school, not only not fearing being murdered, but not having to do active shooter drills all the time. This is nuts. And what's kept us from making any progress is the polarization on this issue. That good people aren't coming together to break the gridlock that's held on Congress. Although, wow, we finally saw a little bit of progress. I support the law that Andy Harris just voted against that made some important changes, closed the boyfriend loophole, and did background checks for young people, get the mental health care that we need. This is an important issue, and I will go in to advocate to get those guns out of the hands of those who will harm us.
Thank you, Heather. And David, please supply your position on federal gun safety legislation.
So you may not know, but I was a senior diplomat and a negotiator between the Israelis and the Palestinians, right? It's hard to envision a bigger divide than between the Israelis and Palestinians, except when you look at gun safety and the Second Amendment. So I'm going to go through some detail and tell you where we have opportunity. DC versus Heller, the 2008 case that allowed for an individual right to bear arms, said that the Second Amendment is no greater or no lesser than a constitutional right than any other right. It's subject to regulation, just like the First Amendment, just like the Fourth Amendment, etc. So the New York case, which just came out, turned on a very important issue. Most states in the country have a shall permit regime. You get a gun, the government, the state, shall permit you to get a gun, unless you have a compelling reason not to give it to them. Maryland and New York have the opposite. It's a may permit. You don't get a gun unless you have a compelling reason for it. That is what was struck down this week in the Supreme Court. Ironically and interestingly, that change from a may permit to a shall permit gives us more opportunity, more substantive capability to bring about common sense gun safety. And you saw it just the other day when Joe Biden signed the new legislation. That change gives us the chance to put in red flag laws and minimum age and gun safety training as a subject matter for the permit. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm going to turn to a question from the audience. And David, this question is going to be directed to you first. What is your strategy for beating Andy Harris in November?
That's a great question, because actually none of this matters if we don't win. You have to win in order to govern. So let's talk about the math, which is something I also learned in the Carroll County Public School System. This is an R plus 14.4 district. That means, as it's now configured, in 2020, Donald Trump won by 14.4%. Okay, but we have headwinds now. Gas is high, inflation is high, and oh, by the way, in that election, 7% of the people voted Joe Biden, Andy Harris. Joe Biden, Andy Harris. So the question before us is, how do you reduce a 14.4% deficit? Or in real numbers, how do you change the votes of 35,000 people who voted for Andy Harris and get them to vote for the Democrat? That is the fundamental challenge, right? So I can tell you one thing. The last time a far left candidate ran in this district, she lost by 27 points. We have to win the right of center independents. We have to win the Hogan Republicans. And we have to win those that still like Donald Trump but hate Andy Harris. Like the Watermen. The Watermen hate Andy Harris. They think he doesn't listen, doesn't deliver, doesn't care. They're going to vote for me. So I have 225 national security professionals across the country. Those that have stood up for America, they've endorsed me. The Watermen have endorsed me. The Frederick Douglass family has endorsed me. That's how we close the gap.
Thank you, David. And Heather, what is your strategy for beating Andy Harris in November?
Andy Harris has never, ever been up against a threat like this campaign is posing to his ongoing ability to create havoc in the 1st Congressional District. One of the reasons why we are on track to beat Andy Harris is, well, our track record. Andy Harris, in the 12 years he's represented us, has passed one law, and it's to rename a post office. When I was in the legislature, I passed meaningful laws that ranged from health care and environmental protections, marriage equality, economic opportunity for our region. I have a record of accomplishment of getting good things done. I also know how to reach across the aisle and connect with people of differing viewpoints to get these kinds of legislation passed. Andy Harris, he received a bipartisan index score from a nonpartisan national organization as the 10th worst member of Congress, being most polarizing in the entire chamber. We have to lower the partisan rhetoric right now. I've been running a campaign from day one that is about transcending partisanship and ideology and coming together as the 1st District to solve our toughest challenges. That's why we have Wayne Gilchrist and Chris Van Hollen. It's why we have Republican and Democratic local elected officials from every stretch of this district backing our campaign. It's why we've raised more resources in grassroots funding and excitement about the campaign that we are running than any other candidate in the history of this district. Andy Harris is so scared he even names me on his mailers. Give me money now or I'm going to lose to Heather Mazier. Damn right he's going to. We're going to hold him accountable for every awful thing he's done for the 12 years he's been in service, and we're offering people a breath of fresh air on how to do politics differently, how to build communities where everyone belongs, and get good things done to solve problems for us again.
Thank you very much, Heather. And this next question is also going to be directed at you first. Heather, what distinguishes you from your opponents that would enable you to be a more effective member of the House?
Well, I discussed some of that in the last question. The track record between what I've been able to accomplish as a legislator and what Andy Harris has done for us in the Congress is a striking contrast, and one that I'm enjoying making on the campaign trail, and one where I'm finding deep resonance in the community. Turns out, though, what a lot of people in our communities are looking for, beyond just someone who knows how to problem solve and get things done, boy, hasn't it been a long, long time since anyone's really listened to us. Having the skills to bring people together, to have difficult conversations, to listen deeply, and find those solutions that represent the best ideas from all of us is the kind of leadership we're hungry for in this district. I'm a bipartisan problem solver. I have worked with conservative pro-life members to expand family planning services in the legislature. I even worked with Governor Hogan to get him to change his position on fracking to enact the fracking ban in Maryland to protect our environment, one of the first states in the country to do so. It's that kind of unique, non-partisan, non-inflammatory approach to politics that's so sorely needed. When we talk about our democracy being under threat right now, it's under threat because of the polarization, and not just because of what happened in a building on one day in January 6th. It's a reflection of how we have forgotten how to come together and be connected about what our problems are and what the solutions need to be. It'll also be important that when I arrive in Congress, I'm not going to be like the average freshman legislator that doesn't know where anything is and has no relationships to get anything done. I've been in public service for 20 years. I arrive in Washington, D.C., knowing exactly where to go, who to talk to, and having friends in the right places to help us get good things done here in this district. I'm running a relentlessly positive campaign, something you won't see from any other candidates in this race, and I'm incredibly proud of what we are doing to inspire people to be for us, not against anyone else.
Thank you, Heather. David, what distinguishes you from your opponents that would enable you to be a more effective member of the House of Representatives?
For 22 years, I represented America. I didn't represent Republicans and I didn't represent Democrats. I represented America on the toughest issues in the most dangerous places on earth. I served in Iraq. I was a negotiator between the Israelis and Palestinians. I was the first into Yemen. I ran America's Syria response. I've been tested by fire. President Obama thought I was good enough to lead America's response to global crises. The Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, and all of the Democrats voted for me. I care about America. I care about making sure that we have a democracy for our children. So if you want to sing Kumbaya, if you want to not see the threat in front of us, that's fine. But if you want a brawler, if you want a fighter, if you want somebody who is going to stand up, who knows this community, who is from this community, who in the heart of hearts is of this community, to take on Andy Harris and to defeat him, then I am your candidate. I have ran billions of dollars and thousands of people in the most complicated crises on earth. I can take down Andy Harris. I can take the 35,000 votes away from him and move it into our district. And you know why? Because if we fail, Donald Trump's coming back and Andy Harris will be in power.
Thank you, David. This next question also comes from the audience, and I'm going to direct it to you first, David. How do you plan to motivate our
Because of the vision that we share on addressing our economic challenges, on not being a climate denier and fixing the environment in our communities, on bringing quality, affordable, and available health care to all of us, and elevating the dialogue. It is our youth who particularly understand more than most how broken our politics are, and the only way we fix it is to do it in a different way.
Thank you, Heather. The next question comes from the audience, but I'm going to actually ask it from a question that we asked in our previous forum. The University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science and Scientific Technical Working Group of the Maryland Climate Change Commission projected significant sea level rise by 2050 for the East Coast, including the Chesapeake Bay. What will you do to address the associated threats? And Heather, I'm directing that question to you first.
My wife, Deborah, and I call the Chesapeake area region our home. We are honored to be stewards of land here in Kent County. And the connection to the land and the water and the resources of our region is deeply grounding and motivating to us and how we show up in the world. You can't live in Maryland's 1st Congressional District and not be connected to the importance of the rising sea levels in our communities and how that's impacting us. Saltwater intruding into our agricultural lands. Communities that are being labeled as potential first lines of climate change refugees because of the rising tides. But just having fancy solutions in Washington, D.C. that don't go anywhere is never going to solve this problem. So I sat down with farmers, environmentalists, nonprofit leaders, and academics to talk about what we could do to address the problem and find consensus and agreement. And what we've put together is an agroclimate plan for Maryland's Eastern Shore, centering farmers as part of the solution. It turns out we stand on a giant carbon sink, the land, And if we do more to sequester carbon in the ground by investing in a national soil health initiative that helps us trap carbon in the soil rather than releasing it through cover crops and other kinds of regenerative farming practices, we'll be steps ahead of this process in a meaningful way. I hope you'll go to the website to read that and to know that I am endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters and the Sierra Club because of my long-standing record in the legislature of being one of Maryland's top environmental activists and policy thinkers, because we have to find very unique solutions for this unique problem in our region.
Thank you, Heather. David, the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science and the Scientific Technical Working Group of the Maryland Climate Change Commission projected significant sea level rise by 2050 for the East Coast, including the Chesapeake Bay. What will you do to address the associated threats?
Dorchester is the fourth largest landmass county in the state of Maryland. In 20 years, it'll be the 14th as a result of sea rise and land loss. I've worked on climate change, running, and blunting and mitigating the worst effects of climate change around the world for decades. I've written on it, I've published on it. I work with MIT, Lincoln Laboratories. We've developed a long-range climate forecasting system that is similar to the famine early warning system, which I ran when I was at the U.S. Agency for International Development. Climate change, climate impact is something that I do for a living, and I've done for a living for many, many years at this point. The fact of the matter is, we can't solve anything on the Eastern Shore unless we work with the local people, unless we work with the watermen and we work with the farmers, but in particular the watermen. Most of the pollution is from free rider polluters in the metropolitan areas in Pennsylvania. It all comes down to Conowingo Dam. Most of the money that is for the Bay goes into the pockets of environmental NGOs and not to drive real solutions that reduce the level of sea level rise. Okay, these are the realities. So if you want something different, right, if you really want to blunt climate change, then you're going to have to pick somebody who's done this for a while. Here's how we do it. You know the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, in Roslyn? They were the ones that spent the money to innovate and incubate some of the best ideas of the last century. We need that for climate. We have Aberdeen Proving Ground, which has taken 100 years of research to pilot some of the best ideas on weapon and defense systems. We can do that right here in Maryland's Eastern Shore for climate solutions going forward to blunt this risk. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next question pertains to accessibility to healthcare, including transportation. And David, I'm going to direct this question to you first. What remedies would you support to improve accessibility to health care for all residents in the U.S. 1st Congressional District?
I mean, first of all, we need better veterans, VA clinics and hospitals, and access for that, because right now our veterans don't have adequate access to that, and that's a massive problem. Secondly, you know, frankly, our transportation system is dangerous and broken. Of course, we need public transportation and means in order to kind of connect the Eastern Shore to the Western Shore and all the health activities there. But the entire transportation system is going to be completely disrupted. Right now, even if you wanted to drive to a VA hospital in Dover, it's going to cost too much to even do that. And so what we need to do is figure out what we've learned from COVID and to decentralize our systems so that there is better access at local levels with individuals. You can further expand on this by simply making sure that the VA and other health benefits that are not available to low resource or vulnerable people are made available through some kind of voucher system or some kind of accelerated insurance program that will allow them to have this access. So really, at the end of this, 4 counties on the Eastern Shore have lost population. That means less resources, less population, less health outcomes. The folks on the Eastern Shore suffer compared to the folks on the Western Shore. The folks in Somerset don't have the healthcare systems that they have in Howard County and in Montgomery County. We have to change that. If we want rural economies to succeed, they have to have access to health systems, which has to be decentralized, localized, and meet the needs of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Heather, what remedies would you support to improve accessibility to health care for all U.S. 1st Congressional District residents?
Thank you. So accessibility to health care comes down to both accessibility and affordability of insurance, but also accessibility to providers and services. I want to step back, though, and first tell you what has always motivated me about healthcare and why this is a topic that I have spent my entire life working on. My father was a United Auto worker for 32 years, and I kind of got my start in politics on the picket lines with him. Often, when our family was picketing, it was because we were trying to hold on to our healthcare benefits. And not having access to affordable healthcare drives so much of the challenges for middle-class families. It's part of the reason why I pushed through and won legislation that allowed young adults to stay on their family health plans until age 25. That was a model that got copied at the federal level for everybody else because I pushed it through Maryland first. Now, in addition to getting healthcare more affordable, and we have to build on what's worked in the Affordable Care Act, push down costs, help with cost sharing and deductibles, expanding some coverage, even looking at a public option for folks. But on the accessibility piece, I heard a hint of transportation in the question that you led into. In the infrastructure section of my Economy First plan, I point out the fact that we have money on the table nationally right now, $200 million that communities can go for transportation planning grants. Specifically for rural areas, because too many times people presume we don't have transportation challenges here. Well, that's apparently someone who doesn't live here and doesn't understand the challenges. I lay out an aggressive plan for how we could go after that, and a series of questions that need to be asked, and a vision for transportation in our region that does connect to our healthcare needs. And I hope maybe we'll have another chance to talk more about that in another question.
Thank you, Heather. And I'm going to direct this next question to you as well, and this pertains to our economy. Given rising energy costs, ongoing supply chain issues, and inflation, what will you do to ensure businesses in the 1st District can continue to grow?
Addressing the economy has been the #1 issue this entire campaign for me. I've gone on a listening tour for the last year and a half where I heard a lot about the challenges of inflation, the high gas prices, struggles that small businesses have finding employees, housing that seems to be the big sleeper issue, non-affordable housing in our area, and listening to farmers and watermen and others in our region with the challenges addressing their livelihoods. I listened and worked with them to come up with a plan that I call Economy First. It is a hyperlocal blueprint that sets out how we get our fair share of the resources that are available at the federal level to address all of these challenges. On specifically inflation and the gas tax, I'm a supporter of a temporary suspension to the gas tax. I believe that rural residents are especially hit hard. And when we saw the state legislature do this, and I supported Governor Hogan the moment he said that we needed to try this, we saw the relief fall at the pump. Now, because our federal highway trust fund has been boosted through the infrastructure package, we've got some playing room there to do another temporary increase at the federal level. We've seen that it works, and we need that kind of relief. But we also have to hold oil and gas companies accountable. We need to have the Federal Trade Commission look into collusion. What kind of illegal activities are happening that they continue to have rising profits at record levels And the cost of a barrel of crude right now is no more expensive than it was in 2018. What's going on here? The FTC can look into that. And the supply chain fixes are another piece of the Economic First Plan. I have 5 seconds, so I'm not going to be able to go into every detail, but it is all on my website at heathermazier.com under the vision statement of the website.
Thank you, Heather. David, given rising energy costs, ongoing supply chain issues, and inflation, what will you do to ensure businesses in the First District can continue to grow?
Thank you. Andy Harris knows that Heather voted to raise taxes 40 times, including the gas tax. Most of those taxes are regressive. Most of those taxes hurt working families, and it hurts small businesses. Andy Harris knows all of this. So how do you supercharge our rural economy? And let's be clear, rural economies in America are broken. Rural economies in America have been left behind and forgotten and hollowed out. This is exactly what I've done for decades. Worked on economic development in rural economies and in forgotten communities that just wanted a bit of hope. So the first problem is that the ease of doing business in Maryland is actually poor. The regulatory regime makes it hard for small businesses, startups, and people of low resources to actually sell their grandmother's peach cobbler pie at the farmer's market. We can go on and on and on, but if you want to start your own business in the state of Maryland, it's incredibly difficult to do it. And that means we are leaving on the table talent and initiatives and innovations from loads of people who can't simply get into can't cross the barriers of entry. Secondly, we need broadband. And we may actually miss broadband, and if we do, then we need low orbit satellites for internet connectivity in rural areas. That's what they're doing in other rural places around the world. We need it here. Our kids can't compete, our businesses can't compete. Third, the Russian invasion of Ukraine gives opportunity right now for our farmers to sell to the world. The agricultural supplies, the wheat and the commodities that we would otherwise get from Ukraine and Russia. And so there's many things that we can do to supercharge our local economy.
Thank you, David. And this question is staying on the topic of the economy. And David, I'm going to direct it to you first. What do you see as the First District's greatest potential in nurturing and growing emerging industries?
So this is an extraordinarily rich district that has enormous opportunities. So let's just walk through it. First of all, we have great human talent right here in the First District. And we have human talent that's connected to some of the best and strongest institutions on the face of the earth. Hopkins, University of Maryland, the Naval Academy, DARPA, Aberdeen Proving Ground, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Third, we are closest to some of the highest end capital on the face of the earth. We literally, this rural economy literally could be an engine that sells to the world, right? But we've been hollowed out. We've been hollowed out because of a regulatory regime that makes it hard for innovation and hard for small businesses to start up. We've been hollowed out because all the economic, social, and political power consolidates between Baltimore and Washington. We've been hollowed out because of unfair trade regulations and rules and regimes and practices with China and elsewhere. My grandfather used to build the Liberty ship in Bethlehem Steel. He sold it all over the world. When we lost the steel industry in Baltimore, it was devastating for families and communities for generations. And did you know that we actually still build ships here on the Eastern Shore in Salisbury? There is no reason, with some slight changes, that we can't have an economy that is connected to some of the most powerful, high-tech, high-finance, high innovation corridors in the entire world right here. We should take advantage of our natural advantages. This is the only thing I've done for the last 30 years. unleash economies. But I tell you, when we get it wrong, the grievances rise and the rural economies rebel. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Heather, what do you see as the first district's greatest potential in nurturing and growing emerging industries?
I'd say the section of my Economy First plan that addressed this best is a section that I call Make More on the Shore. First, it acknowledges that we have an economy on the shore that is very much tied to the Chesapeake Bay. Clean energy jobs are the future of this region, and we're seeing it right here in the First District in Caroline County and Federalsburg, where Crystal Steel Fabricators just committed $70 million and a couple hundred new jobs in creating the parts and manufacturing the wind turbines for clean energy innovation in our region. When we are on the cutting edge of this, we set industries that benefit from this technology opportunity growing up and down the seaboard. Maryland's one of the first states to push towards doing more wind energy. And when we invest in it here, it creates and unleashes opportunities for our workers to put their expertise to use, not just in Maryland, but other states that are following suit on this. We also have an opportunity in life sciences that is really important to our region. In Maryland, we have so much connectivity to federal labs, great research institutions, that we're seeing companies like Clean Nano Biotechnology in Cecil County investing a lot of money in new manufacturing facilities for generating jobs for nanobiotechnology in this region. And we're also experiencing an opportunity in the infrastructure package to see the ways in which, if we had a fierce advocate who voted for the infrastructure plan instead of against it, could go in and say, hey, wait a minute, Maryland doesn't have just one port in the Port of Baltimore. The second busiest port in this state is right here in the First District in Salisbury. And our shipbuilders there deserve an expanded port to help grow that. And I go into great detail in the plan on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And our next question revolves around healthcare and also care for our senior citizens. The Eastern Shore has the 3 oldest counties by median age in the state of Maryland. What is your plan to ensure this population is supported and cared for throughout their retirement?
Thank you. I can't answer this question without first honoring the work that my spouse, Deborah Mazier, did on this very topic. In our community in Chestertown, our hospital was about to close down. It was under huge threat. Deborah and I met working on Capitol Hill as policy analysts in healthcare. And we immediately went to work together to collaborate with the Save the Hospital Coalition in Kent County to save our hospital. Governor Hogan and the legislature went on to pass a law asking for there to be a working group that investigated what our rural healthcare needs are in 5 of the 9 counties of the Eastern Shore. Deborah was appointed to co-chair that and spent 3 years working on that. And our work together, focusing on making sure that healthcare facilities on the shore are open and available, is really an important piece to this. But we also have to have an advocate at the federal level that supports Medicare and Social Security. Andy Harris fights against us in those programs every chance he gets. I'm someone who can go into the Congress, understand well all the intricacies of the very complicated Medicare program, all of its parts, and be a voice for assuring that all of our coverage is available, affordable, and expanded. I support vision, dental, and enhanced mental services in the Medicare package because for too long we've been cutting our head off of the rest of the body. If you need vision and dental or mental health services, you've got to pay more out of pocket for that. That's not supporting anyone, let alone our seniors. And when we do it for our seniors, guess what? Health insurers for everyone else tend to follow suit. The health care that all the rest of us enjoy is often modeled off of what Congress does for our seniors. We fix it for our seniors first, and all the rest of us end up benefiting too.
Thank you, Heather. David, the Eastern Shore has the 3 oldest counties by median age in Maryland. What is your plan to ensure this population is supported and cared for throughout retirement?
Thank you. Obviously, we need to make sure that Medicare and Social Security trust funds are funded and viable and sustainable in the future, indefinitely. That's absolutely the case. Secondly, we need to make sure that our community colleges are providing the training for the nursing and the nursing assistant care for a growing demand on the Eastern Shore, so that that demand is actually met with a next generation of healthcare providers that are from here and know the community and want to stay here. Thirdly, and interestingly, Andy Harris refused to provide and lower the age, the Medicare access for the firemen. Okay, they're not the most seniors, but that is an avenue to make sure that people can stay at home and get the care that they need. And I will just say one thing. The 3 oldest counties in the state of Maryland on the Eastern Shore by median age tells us something else. It tells us that there's a population decline. Did you know in the last 10 years, 4 counties on the Eastern Shore actually lost people? That means people are moving away. That means jobs are moving away. That means taxes are moving away. That means opportunities are moving away. And my guess is that the 3 oldest counties on the Eastern Shore are also the 3 of the 4 that lost population. And so you need an economy that actually works if you want to care for the people that are there. And a failure to do that will mean a failure to take care of that generation that provided so much.
Thank you, David. And before I ask the next question, I just want to remind the audience, if you would like your question asked, you should have been presented a note card when you checked in. Simply fill out that note card with your question, raise your hand or raise the card. One of our runners will gather it and then present it to the event organizers here to be asked. The next question comes from the audience, and David, I'm going to direct it towards you first. What are the most important initiatives to restore residents' confidence in government?
To restore, sorry?
To restore residents' confidence in government.
Citizens, voters.
Yes.
I mean, this is why I'm running for Congress, because...
Please use your microphone.
This is why I'm running for Congress, because we're at a fundamental breaking point. It's not just January 6th. It's not just the fact that that Donald Trump tried to steal the 2020 election. Walk with me to the future for a moment. It's November 9th, the morning of November 9th. Andy Harris won by a landslide. The House falls into the hands of a radical Republican majority. Mitch McConnell is the Senate leader again. And Donald Trump gets on Fox News and says he's running for Congress. He's running for president in 2024. That he's back. And what we will have said is that nothing mattered. January 6th didn't matter. Andy Harris bringing a gun into the Capitol didn't matter. Andy Harris failing to honor the Capitol Police, it didn't matter. We will have given wind to Andy Harris and Donald Trump. We will have said accountability is irrelevant. And when that happens, we lose our democracy. All these other issues are going to be immaterial under an authoritarian state. We are at real risk of losing our democracy. The only way to protect it is to claw back and win the seats that matter. And that means electing, nominating people who can actually win in this district.
Thank you, David. And Heather, I modify the question ever so slightly. What are the most important initiatives to restore citizens' confidence in government?
We're drinking from a fire hose, and we have been for a while, and we're exhausted, and we're scared, and we're frustrated, and we're feeling hopeless at times. January 6th, and the stolen election efforts, mass shootings, a climate crisis that seems never to be addressed, Roe v. Wade being overturned. It all just seems like so much. And in this question, what are the initiatives that can restore confidence by citizens in government again? It's being reminded that we are the government. We have been deferring outside of ourselves for too long. We have been giving our power to elected officials and then going about our lives and not participating in the process. We've given our power over to somebody else. And all of these crises are pointing to this massive moment where we are asked to step into our own power to do something about it. We each do have a say here. Government elected officials are just a reflection of who we are. We can point fingers at Donald Trump, but he represents a huge swath of a population that is a reflection of him. They got motivated and excited to elect him. Are we willing to step up and put the same motivation and energy into electing someone who brings out the best in us rather than encouraging all of our darkest impulses to come forward in civic life? That's the choice. That's the awakening we need to have in this election.
Thank you, Heather. I'd also like to thank the audience for writing your questions in print. Makes it very easy to read. The last form, all the questions came in cursive, and the millennial in me had to translate what I was reading, so thank you for making my life very easy. Heather, this next question comes from the audience, and it is, we have closed party primaries in Maryland. What do you think about open primaries, and what are their effects on outcomes?
We have a closed primary system in Maryland, primarily because the impetus in having a system with closed primaries is to assure that each party gets to pick their own best candidate for the election. And it discourages gaming of the system by Democrats running into a Republican primary and trying to pick who they think they'd rather be matched up against, or vice versa. It gives an opportunity for a contest of ideas to see in a primary. It's really great to have a chance to compete, to show what you think, what you believe, why you're the best candidate, and then let the voters decide. And in a closed primary system, the Democrats get to pick their choice, the Republicans get to pick their choice, but then the real election, the general election, is where everybody comes together and has a choice. And having an opportunity in the general election to really compete for the votes of people regardless of party label is the part of this race I'm most excited about. We have so many supporters right now in this race that can't quite vote for me yet because they don't get a chance to until after the primary. I experienced that when I was a candidate for higher office. I'd go on conservative talk radio, and I'd have folks call in and say, well, I don't agree with you on everything, but I really like that you're honest and trustworthy, and I'd like to support you if you make it out of the primary. That didn't happen in 2014 in that election, but I'm excited about the opportunity in this race to take the growing movement that we've built and show in the general election that we've got what it takes to defeat Andy Harris in November.
Thank you, Heather. David, we have closed party primaries in Maryland. What do you think about open primaries, and what are their effects on outcomes?
So I support open primaries, and I support ranked choice voting. And let me explain why. So closed primary systems accelerate and accentuate polarization in America, right? That's just empirically the case. When you have closed primaries, the nominee, the party nominee, tends to go to the extreme of that party's base. Further, when you have that kind of polarization, you end up with a lot of gerrymandering, which institutionalizes the polarization. And we saw it here, with the first district being grossly gerrymandered back in 2011. And that resulted in us having Andy Harris and zero competition. And by the way, I think you voted for the gerrymandering in 2011. But the point is, if you have open primaries, what happens is that you get more of a consensus candidate who is more likely to prevail in the general. And if both sides have open primaries, then what you're doing is essentially reinforcing the center, which is one of the initiatives that we need if we want the voters to have better faith in our government. Now let me talk about ranked choice voting really quickly. New York City does it, and a number of other places do it. If your first choice doesn't win, you get to your second choice. It's a bit complicated. There's a formula that's attached to this, but we have 10 people running for governor right now in the Democratic primary. Somebody could win it all with 20%, who could be completely unelectable in a general. And that's why I support both open primaries and ranked choice voting.
Thank you, David. Our final question before we move into closing remarks, and David, I'm going to direct this to you first. This question comes from the audience, and the question is, do you both pledge to support the winning candidate?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. So without any additional questions, we are going to move into the closing remarks. It is going to be a little bit different. We're unable to reset the clock to have it reflect the 3 minutes that you'll have to deliver your closing remarks. So I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way with a timer on my phone, or maybe the new-fashioned way, depending on how you want to slice and dice this. I'm going to set a timer for... That's why we have it, right? All right, we're good. So the timer now reflects 3 minutes. David, I'm going to allow you to deliver your closing remarks first. You have 3 minutes, and the time begins now.
When I represented America in the toughest places on earth, whether it was Iraq or Yemen or Libya or Gaza or Syria, I had to have clear eyes. I had to have sound judgment, and I had to report accurately back to the National Security Council. If I inflated it, or kind of guessed it wrong, or overstated my case, people died. I had to decide how much food to buy, how much shelter to provide, how to evacuate hundreds and thousands of people, how to represent America. telling it straight in a complex crisis got me through it. Andy Harris is going to be tough to beat. Do not be misled. We're going to have, he won by 70,000 votes out of 180. He had 180,000. His competitor had 110,000 in the last midterm. A 70,000 vote difference. Right? We have to build the coalition that will appeal to that center. We have to demonstrate to people who don't support Joe Biden, who think that the prices of gas are just too high, who think that, you know what, maybe January 6th wasn't that big of a deal, or that the states should regulate reproductive rights. We have to win. Losing is not an option. We have lost time and time and time again to Andy Harris. I am not a career politician. This is my first time running. I don't profit from politics. I'm not involved in politics. The only thing I've ever done is served. Now, that means we have to have a strong spine, a spine of steel, courage in our heart to stand up and say enough. We're clawing back our democracy, and we need the leader who can do it. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Heather, your closing remarks.
I told you about my father, United Auto Worker, a welder at Caterpillar for 32 years. One of the most important lessons that I learned from him on those picket lines was to always have the courage of your convictions, to always speak up and fight for what you believe in. And probably most importantly, my father always taught me that you have to do what is right, not necessarily what is easy. It would be my greatest honor to be your congresswoman, to be your voice in Washington, D.C. One of the things I have learned in more than 20 years of public service is that those who are closest to the problem are the best people to seek out for the solutions. That's why I've been meeting with farmers and watermen and small business leaders, educators, environmentalists, and child care workers throughout this region to come up with an approach, a vision, blueprints for action on how we can do it differently for our economy, for the climate crisis, for healthcare needs in our region. We must have a congresswoman who shows up, listens, comes up with consensus approaches, and then goes to Washington, D.C. to be the fiercest advocate you have ever had. I will wake up every day, if you give me the honor of representing you, thinking about nothing more than what can I do to better serve my community today. You've seen it on the campaign trail from the moment we jumped in this race. We are covering this district from Harford County and Baltimore all the way to the lower shore. Every day we're out there meeting, talking, showing up, listening, coming up with approaches and solutions that will deliver meaningful results for our district that has been ignored for way, way too long. It's not enough, though, for me to just make a case for why you should fire Andy Harris. If I'm not doing my job to get you excited to elect Heather Mazier, then I don't deserve to win. But thankfully, the magic of bringing those two things together on the campaign trail is striking like lightning everywhere I go. I hope that with your support and your vote to be your congresswoman, I hope I've earned that today. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for bringing us together to have these important dialogues. Thank you to Dave for your courage to jump in this race and give it your best. I truly, fundamentally believe in my deepest heart of hearts that when we all come together to elect a congresswoman who will represent us with great distinction and honor, that great things will happen in this district again. And I look forward to your vote on July 19th, or earlier if you do early voting. Thank you so much.
This concludes today's forum with our candidates for Maryland's 1st U.S. Congressional District. I'd like to thank Heather Mazier and Dave Hardin for participating in the forum. I'd also like to extend my thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting today's forum, and the audience for joining and participating on this Sunday afternoon. Thank you.